The victory fires burn out fast. The red glow in the sky fades like a dirty promise. Wine spills from drinking horns, cheers break into snores, and then the silence. The silence where history really starts to settle the bill. Not how much gold was taken, but how many people became assets. Can you hear it? The groaning timber of the ships, the bite of the ropes, the sea swallowing a cry for help. Don't look away. These are 7 fates. 7 ways the victors turn noble women into living spoils of war. Every story is a blade, and the 7th will erase a woman's name from her own grave. Before we go deeper, tell me what city you're listening from so history knows whose door it's knocking on, and if this raw truth deserves a place on YouTube, hit subscribe. You're going to need to take a deep breath. In 821, at the promontory of Etar, what is today Houth, a line appears in the chronicles, as cold as steel. Etar was plundered by the heathens, and they carried off a great number of women. No name, no age, no last words. Everything was recorded like a ledger item. Can you imagine that moment? Hands ripped from door frames, a child's call for their mother cut short? People with ancestors, with family trees, with wedding rings after one boat ride, became thralls, the lowest class property for sale. On the deck, they were stuffed like cargo, eyes stinging with salt, hands purple from rope burn. The journey itself was a biological filter. The weak were given to the waves, and those who lived would pay with their entire lives. The destination could be Dyflin, what would become Dublin, a bustling human market where a voice was converted to silver, 12 to 20 ounces for a healthy body. Enough to buy a season's crops, enough to rebuild a roof for someone else, and enough to shred the bloodline of the one being sold. From there, they'd go on, Hedeby, Burka, then down the rivers to the land of the Rus, to the massive markets of Byzantium or the Abbasids. Yesterday's noble daughter, now priced by the thickness of her wrist or the evenness of her weaving. Not one name was kept, only the category, people delivered. Don't breathe easy. The second story is only worse because this one has a name. Melkorka, daughter of an Irish king Myrkjartan, was captured around the mid-10th century. In a Norwegian market, amid the haggling and the clang of iron, an Icelandic chieftain named Hoskold stopped. 3 marks of silver for a person. 1 mark was 8 ounces, so 24 ounces total, 3 times the price of a prime milk cow. But Hoskold bought something else, her silence. Melkorka did not speak. Not one word for the rest of the journey, not a sound when she set foot in her master's long hall, not a word when she bore his child. Many called her mute, but that silence was her last thin armor, the final fence on the internal border of a person who had no rights left except to her own thoughts. One day, Hoskold walked past a stream and heard a whisper. Melkorka wasn't mute. She was teaching her son, the boy Olaf, to speak her language. Your grandfather is Myrkjartan, king of the Irish. The mask fell. Her identity was exposed. Her status in the house ticked up 1 notch, but the legal chains didn't fall. She was still a frilla, an owned concubine. Olaf grew to be a chieftain, returned to Ireland, and was acknowledged by his grandfather. And her? She never went home. A life ended by the cold sea, bought hidden, revealed, but not freed. Have you ever heard the story of a monastery that set itself on fire? In 870, the North Sea wind blew cold against the cliffs of Coldingham. Bad news traveled faster than the army. Abbess Ebba, the younger, knew what was coming. Plunder, humiliation, rape. She gathered her nuns. A razor, a decision with no turning back. Ebba cut off her own nose and upper lip, ordering her sisters to do the same, to make their bodies an image the invaders would no longer desire. A circle of bloody faces, silent as a vow. When the army burst in, they found not trembling victims, but a collective that had chosen not to be taken again. Rage answered with fire. The doors were barred, the wood was piled, the flames licked the stone. They didn't die because they wanted to die. They died because they refused to live by terms set by others. Their bones mixed with the wood ash, falling into the clay of their own monastery. Burned, buried, but not broken. What are you thinking right now? Write a few words in the comments. The next story is even colder. The year 1011. In Canterbury, the religious heart of England, we see a different kind of violence. Less bloody at the start, but persistent, taking hostages to weigh against an entire nation. Thorkel, the Tall, besieged the city, 20 days of steel and fire. The gate opened not because the wall fell, but because of a traitor. The Vikings poured in like a flood. They killed many, but not all. For the high-status women, the abbesses, they had a different number to enter in their books, negotiating leverage. That's how names like Elfgifu and Abbess Leofwine survived. They became poker chips. For months, these people lived between humiliation and the fragile hope that some amount of silver, some negotiation, some king would buy them back. The sum of the story was the enormous Danegeld 48,000 pounds of silver paid shortly after, a fate returned with silver, not justice. In the middle of a drunken feast, an archbishop died under thrown bones and an axe blow. In the dark corner, the women lived on like breathing receipts. If you think that's the extreme, let's go west to Scotland, year 870, to the rock of Dumbarton Alt Clut. 4 months of siege, the water in the well evaporated to the last drop. Have you ever been so thirsty your tongue cracked? They were, collectively, when the gate opened out of desperation, the victors set up a warehouse on the Clyde River all winter, packing up their greatest prize, not gold, but people. The next year, 200 ships left the shore, carrying booty and people. Angles, Britons, Picts, even King Arthgal was among them. His wife, the ladies of the court, none of them were aristocrats on any document anymore. They were herded onto ships back to Dublin like timber and iron. When they landed, each one was a price tag, a lot number, a silver bar already in a merchant's pocket. King Arthgal was killed later. The women vanished into the anonymous crowd of a slave market. Let's pause for a beat. This was not a byproduct of war. This was the objective. If you're listening on headphones, you might want to turn the volume down. The next story carries the sound of an anchor chain dragging an entire nation down with it. Now, let's turn to Iceland, the land of beautiful sagas about exploration and freedom. But every glorious page of history has a supplemental page, with details people don't want to read aloud. Many settlers brought with them women captured from Ireland and Scotland. No conspiracy theory needed. The evidence is in the bones. The maternal DNA of early Icelanders is more than half from the British Irish Isles. Under that wood roof, smelling of pine, we see wife in a different context. A woman dragged from her home, forced into a bed, bearing children in a land so cold, her breath turned to ice. Some names trickle down, like Refgerd, an Irish noblewoman taken by a man named Eyvind Sorkvir. Some families ate Christian bread but married their children into families whose matriarchs were spoils of war. On a map, Iceland is a dot in the ocean. In the heart, it's a trauma that echoes for generations. A child with his father's blue eyes, his mother's dark hair, and no knowledge of what his mother's tongue even sounded like. Plundered, transported, replanted. But what seed doesn't carry the genetics of its own violence? Over 20 meters long, the prow carved like a coiled serpent. In the summer of 834, they buried that ship, along with a wooden chamber full of luxuries, a carved four-wheel cart, ceremonial sleds, beds, chests, tapestries, horses, and dogs. In the chamber lay 2 female skeletons, one old, so sick with cancer, her bones were pocked with it, one younger, around 50. For decades, people told the comfortable story. This was the mistress and her loyal servant. But science is impolite. The younger woman's genetic markers belong to a branch rare in northern Europe, more common near the Black Sea and Iran. Isotope analysis in her bones shows the high-protein diet of the elite only appeared at the end of her life, meaning she wasn't born here, and that luxury came late along with chains. When her mistress died, her life was likely ended as part of the ritual, a sacrifice to go with. That lavish chamber wasn't an honor for her. It was a mirror reflecting someone else's power. Bound, buried, forgotten. Please, stay calm, because the last part is even more bitter. Even a magnificent ship burial can be a sealed prison. Take a deep breath. The next image isn't meant to be comforting. A mass grave found in Dorset in 2009. 54 young men beheaded around the year 1000, their heads piled in a separate corner. Tooth enamel analysis showed they came from Scandinavia, one from near the Arctic Circle.